He gave them his fortune to see what they truly valued. But it was what his maid spent it on that broke his heart and changed his life forever. A billionaire, weary of fake love and hidden motives, decides to test the three women closest to him: his girlfriend, his ambitious assistant, and his quiet maid. What each woman does with a limitless credit card exposes their souls: greed, pride, and one silent act of kindness that would lead him not just to love, but to the home his heart had long forgotten. Hello, family. Welcome to African Tales by Mama Africa. Please subscribe and leave a like for us. It means the world to us. Also share this video to your friends and loved ones, and turn on post notifications so you don't miss future videos from us. Thank you as you do so. Sit back and relax as we dive into the story. For all his fame and power, Chike Maduako was a man suffocating in silence. Every interview, every business article, every camera flash painted him as the perfect man: disciplined, wealthy, visionary. But behind his sharp suits and clean smile, he carried a quiet loneliness that no amount of success could silence. That night, he sat by the floor-to-ceiling window of his penthouse overlooking the Lagos Lagoon, the city lights trembling on the water like distant fireflies. He hadn't slept properly in weeks. He'd built everything he dreamed of. But the people around him only seemed to want a piece of his crown, not the man underneath it. He picked up his phone and called Kunle Ose, his head of security, and his oldest confidant. "Kunle," he said quietly, "come upstairs. I have something on my mind." Within minutes, the elevator opened and Kunle stepped in. Tall, calm, carrying that mix of soldier discipline and quiet loyalty Chako had come to rely on. "Oga, you sound like you're carrying the world again," Kunle said, half smiling. Chike returned the faintest smile. "It's not the world, Kunle, just people." Kunle tilted his head. "What about them?" Chike turned back toward the city. "I want to know who's real around me. I have power, I have wealth, but I don't have truth, and I think I finally know how to find it." He placed 3 platinum cards on the table. No limit, no restrictions, just a name printed in silver. Kunle frowned. "What's the plan?" "I'll give one to each of the women closest to me," Chike said. "Amara, Tara, and Azin. For 3 days they'll have full access to my wealth. Whatever they do with it will tell me exactly who they are." Kunle exhaled sharply. "You're testing them." "I'm observing them," Chike corrected, "and I need your help." Kunle took one look at his boss and knew the decision was already made. "You want me to track the transactions?" "Everything," Chike said. "Purchases, locations, timing. Quietly, they mustn't know." Kunle nodded slowly. "Oga, this one go." "Shake people low. Be ready." "I've been ready for disappointment for years," Chike said softly. The next afternoon, Chike met Amara Nwosu, his girlfriend, for lunch at one of Lagos' most exclusive rooftop restaurants. She arrived late, as always, but when she walked in, heads turned. Every step, every flick of her wrist carried the confidence of a woman who knew her worth in attention. "Baby," she said, sliding into the chair opposite him. "I'm sorry, traffic nearly killed me today." Chike smiled faintly. "You said that yesterday, too." She laughed. "It's Lagos. You can't trust the roads or the people on them." Their meals arrived, grilled seafood and sparkling wine. They talked, or rather she talked. She told stories about who she met, where she wanted to travel, which influencers got new endorsements. Chike listened quietly. the kind of listening that didn't need words. When the bill came, he reached into his jacket and pulled out a small silver envelope. "I got you something," he said. Amara's eyes widened. "Another gift? You're spoiling me." She tore the envelope open and froze. Inside was a limitless platinum credit card, sleek and heavy in her palm. "Chike," she breathed, half laughing. "You can't be serious." "I am," he said calmly. "You can use it for anything you want. No restrictions, no limits." She blinked, disbelieving. "Wait, are you joking?" "Not at all. Just 3 days. Do whatever makes you happy." Amara gasped, then smiled, a slow, satisfied smile that glittered brighter than her earrings. "Baby, I'll make you proud," she said, already pulling out her phone. Within minutes, she was messaging her friends, planning shopping trips, and talking about outfits for a small yacht party that weekend. Chike watched quietly. She didn't even ask why he gave it, just how she could use it. Later that same afternoon, Tara Bassi, his personal assistant, entered Chike's office with her tablet in hand. "Sir, here's your schedule for tomorrow. Morning briefing with the finance team, then a lunch meeting with the Minister of Trade." Chike nodded distractedly, scrolling through his emails. "Tara, do you ever take a day off?" She smiled politely. "Not when I work for a man who doesn't." He looked up at her then. Neat bun, crisp white shirt, efficiency in human form. "You've been with me 3 years," he said. "You've saved me from more disasters than I can count." "Just doing my job, sir," she said. He opened his drawer and pulled out the second card. "Then let me do something for you." She hesitated, taking it slowly. "Sir, what's this?" "A small gift," Chike said. "For 3 days, that card is yours. Spend it however you want." Her brows knit together. "There's no limit on this?" "None." She gave a short laugh, unsure if it was a prank. "Sir, this is not how bonuses usually work." "It's not a bonus," he said, smiling faintly. "It's trust." Tara studied the card, her mind already calculating. She was ambitious, and ambition always saw possibility. "All right, sir," she said smoothly. "I'll make good use of it." And she did. Within hours, she was at a spa in Lekki, then a luxury lounge meeting a group of investors she'd been chasing for months. She wasn't buying jewelry or dresses. She was buying access, reputation, and influence. She didn't waste the gift. She weaponized it. That evening, Chike returned home later than usual. The house was quiet except for the soft hum of the generator and the distant clatter from the kitchen. Ezine Okafor, his maid, was cleaning the dining area when he walked in. She straightened immediately, wiping her hands on her apron. "Good evening, sir," she said, bowing slightly. Chike nodded. "You're still working?" "I was just finishing up, sir. I didn't want the plate sitting overnight." He hesitated, then reached into his pocket and pulled out the third platinum card. "Ezine," he said, "I want you to have this." She looked at the card as if it were something fragile. "Sir, I don't understand." "It's a gift," Chike said gently. "For 3 days you can use it for anything you want." Her eyes widened. "For me?" "For you." She stepped back slightly, shaking her head. "Sir, I can't. I don't even know what to buy with that kind of money." "That's fine," he said softly. "You'll figure it out." She took the card slowly, holding it like it might vanish. "Thank you, sir," she whispered. That night, Ezine sat on her small bed in the servants' quarters, staring at the shining piece of metal in her hand. The idea of spending even 1,000 naira on herself felt strange. Her mind drifted to her mother's medication, her younger brother's unpaid school fees, and the frail boy next door who'd been coughing for weeks. While others dreamed of yachts and champagne, Ezina simply prayed for wisdom. The next morning, Lagos stirred awake beneath a pale golden sky. Traffic crawled, horns blared, and hawkers called out to passing cars. Inside the quiet of Chike's penthouse, the world moved differently, colder, more deliberate. He sat in his study, sipping coffee as Kunle walked in, holding a tablet. "They've all started using the cards, sir," Kunle said. Chike didn't look up immediately. "Who started first?" "Amara." He gave a tired nod. "Of course." Kunle set the tablet on the table and pressed play. The footage showed Amara at the entrance of a designer boutique in Lekki Phase 1, surrounded by friends and cameras. She waved the card in the air, laughing. "My man said no limits. You people should shop like queens." The store. Attendants scurried around her as she picked up clothes without checking prices. Within an hour, she spent what most families wouldn't earn in 10 years. Chike's expression didn't change, but his eyes dimmed. "How much so far?" Kunle scrolled. 23 million naira before lunch, another 15 before dinner. She's planning a party this weekend. Yacht rental already booked. Chike looked away. The taste of the coffee turned bitter in his mouth. Kunle hesitated before showing the next video. "Now, Tara." The screen changed. Tara sat at a sleek restaurant table with 2 men in suits. She wore confidence like perfume, every gesture calculated. "You see," she was saying, "Mr. Maduako is too traditional. He doesn't see the world as fast as it moves. But with my access to his network, we can push things forward." She smiled, sliding the platinum card across the table to pay the bill. Kunle tapped again. Another clip. Tara in a spa, then a hotel business lounge, then entering a private conference room with investors. "She's not wasting it, sir," Kunle said carefully. "She's using it for power moves." "Power for herself," Chike said quietly. He rubbed his temples. "And Ezina?" Kunle paused. "Nothing yet. Card's still inactive." Chike frowned. "Nothing at all? Not a single transaction?" Chike leaned back. "Strange woman." He thought about her small hands clutching that card the night before. She probably tucked it away somewhere safe, too unsure to even try. A part of him felt almost guilty for putting her through the test. By evening, Kunle returned with new updates. He looked different, almost uneasy. "Sir, she used the card," he said quietly. Chike straightened. "Ezina?" Kunle nodded. "Yes, but, sir, you need to see this yourself." He played a short clip. The video came from a small government hospital in Aja. The lights flickered, the floor was cracked, and nurses moved frantically between patients. Ezina stood at the payment counter, holding the platinum card with both hands. In front of her was a thin woman weeping beside a boy on a stretcher. "Please, nurse, attend to the child," Ezin was saying. "Use this card for the bills, all of it, whatever he needs." The nurse hesitated. "Madam, are you sure?" "Yes," Ezin said firmly. "The boy's life first. Everything else can wait." The nurse ran off. Ezina sat with the mother, placed a hand on her shoulder, and whispered something that made the woman burst into tears of gratitude. Chike sat, frozen. For a long time, he didn't blink. Kunle stopped the video. The room was silent except for the hum of the air conditioner. "She didn't buy anything for herself," Kunle said softly. "Not food, not clothes, just that." Chike turned to him. "How much was it?" 670,000. Emergency surgery for a tracheal blockage. She stayed at the hospital until midnight to make sure the child survived. Chike said nothing. His hand gripped the edge of the table so hard his knuckles turned white. "Sir?" Kunle said gently. Chike looked up slowly. "Track her, but don't interrupt her. Let her finish her 3 days." Kunle nodded and left quietly, closing the door behind him. That night, Chike didn't touch his dinner. He sat alone by the window again, watching the city lights ripple across the lagoon. Amara's laughter echoed in his memory, Tara's confident tone, and then Azine's quiet voice saying, "The boy's life first." It haunted him. He thought about how often he'd walked past her in the hallways, barely noticing. She was invisible to him, just another face in his house. Yet in 3 years, she'd never taken advantage of anything. Never once complained. His phone buzzed. It was Amara again. She had sent him a video from her yacht party. Music blasted through the speakers. Champagne sprayed in the air as she shouted into the camera, "My man said no limits." He turned off the phone and dropped it on the table. Seconds later, another message arrived, this time from Tara. A photo of her shaking hands with a foreign investor captioned, "Making moves for the company, boss." Chike rubbed his face and whispered, "You're not doing it for the company, Tara. You're doing it for yourself." Then his phone buzzed one last time. It wasn't a message, just a transaction alert. The smallest one of the day. N17500, purchased at a roadside pharmacy in Aja. Chike stared at it for a long time. When Kunle came back the next morning, he found him still sitting there, the tablet beside his untouched breakfast. "Sir, they're all back online," Kunle said. "Amara's heading to Banana Island. Tara's flying out tonight for a conference in Nairobi." "And Ezine?" Kunle smiled faintly. "She's at a market in Aja, buying groceries. But she's not shopping for herself. She's giving them to families near that same hospital." Chike looked out the window, his voice almost a whisper. "She's spending my money to feed strangers." Kunle nodded. "And she hasn't taken a single kobo for herself." Chike leaned back, overwhelmed. "Maybe she's the only honest person I've met in years." Kunle hesitated. "What do you want to do, sir?" Chike turned from the window, his expression steady now. "I want to see them all. Tonight? At dinner?" Kunle blinked. "All 3? "Yes." "And what should I tell them it's about?" "Tell them," Chike said, his voice calm but heavy, "that I want to thank them." By evening the table was set again. The same chandelier, the same perfect silence. But this time something was different. The man who waited beneath that golden light wasn't testing anyone anymore. He was ready to confront the truth he already knew would hurt. The mansion was quiet that night. Too quiet. The kind of silence that builds before a storm. Chike sat at the head of his long glass dining table, staring at 3 empty seats. In front of him, silverware gleamed beneath the chandelier, and the faint scent of jasmine floated through the air. He wasn't hungry. The food was just decoration. What he wanted tonight was truth. One by one they arrived. Amara was first. She floated into the room like she was walking onto a red carpet, her gown glittering, her hair perfectly styled. "Baby," she said with a dazzling smile, "you look serious. What's all this? You're hosting dinner and didn't even tell me the theme?" Chike didn't respond. He just gestured to the chair across from him. Then came Tara, dressed sharply in a cream suit, tablet in hand as always. "Evening, sir," she said, tone professional. "I came straight from the airport. We should discuss that investor deal, by the way. He said nothing, just motioned for her to sit. Finally, Ezina entered. She moved quietly, wearing a simple dress and slippers, her hands folded in front of her. She looked like she had accidentally walked into a world she didn't belong in. "Good evening, sir," she said softly. Chike's eyes softened for a second. "Sit, Ezine." When the last chair scraped against the floor, he spoke. "I gave each of you a platinum card last week. No limits, no questions. Do you remember what I said?" Amara laughed lightly. "You said to spend it however we wanted, and I did. Are you regretting it already?" Tara glanced up from her tablet. "Sir, I assumed it was a test of judgment. If so, I'm ready to explain my reasoning." Ezina didn't speak. She looked down at her hands. Chike leaned back, exhaling slowly. "Good. Because tonight I want to talk about what each of you did." He pressed a small button on his phone. Instantly, 3 screens descended from the ceiling, each showing surveillance footage. Amara's eyes widened as she saw herself at the boutique, laughing, posing for photos with friends, shouting, "My man said no limits!" She froze, color draining from her face. "Wait, were you spying on me?" Chike didn't answer. The next screen played. Tara at the lounge, her voice calm and strategic as she spoke with investors. "You see, I'm the one who really moves things behind the scenes," she was saying. "With me on board, you're connected to him automatically." Then the third screen, the small, shaky video of Ezina at the clinic. The nurse, the boy gasping for air, the moment Ezan handed over the card. The air in the room changed. No one moved. When the screens lifted back up, the silence was almost painful. Chike's voice was low but steady. 3 women. Same opportunity. 3 choices. Amara pushed back her chair, eyes flashing. "So this was all a setup? You gave us that card to embarrass us?" "I gave you that card to see your heart," Chike said quietly. "My heart," she scoffed. "You think buying clothes means I don't have one? You told me to enjoy myself. You said no rules, no limits." "I did," he said, "and you showed me exactly what brings you joy, attention." Her voice rose. "You're unbelievable, Chike. You make me feel like a beggar for accepting what you gave. You act like generosity is a trap." "This wasn't about generosity, Amara," he said, voice cutting through her anger. "It was about truth. You spent 80 million naira in 3 days and didn't call me once." "I didn't need to call you. You said to do what makes me happy." He sighed. "Then I hope you're very happy." Amara stood abruptly, her chair scraping. "You wanted me to fail so you could feel superior. You and your tests, your control games. You'll die alone, Chike." Her voice cracked, but pride held her back from tears. She grabbed her purse and stormed out, her heels echoing across the marble until the door slammed behind her. No one spoke. Tara cleared her throat gently. "Sir, may I explain my own actions?" He nodded. She leaned forward, hands clasped. "Everything I did was calculated. I used the card for business. I built connections that could strengthen your empire. I acted in your best interest." "By telling investors you are my best interest?" he said softly. She blinked. "That's not what I said." He picked up the tablet beside him, scrolling. Her voice from the recording filled the air again. "Mr. Maduako is too traditional. With me, you're guaranteed access." Tara froze. Her face reddened, then hardened. That was strategy. In business, people need to believe in proximity to power. You were using my name to build your own. Tara held his gaze. And if I was? Haven't I earned it? I've given this company years of my life, sir. While others partied, I stayed working. I wanted something of my own, something you'd never give me. Chike's tone softened slightly. And you could have had it, without lying. Her shoulders slumped. That's easy for you to say. You already have everything. She stood quietly, gathered her tablet, and said, "Thank you for the opportunity, sir." Her voice trembled just a little before she turned and left. Now only Ezina remained. She looked terrified sitting across from him, her fingers twisting the edge of her dress. Chike leaned forward. "Tell me, Ezine, why the hospital?" She swallowed hard. "Sir, I didn't plan to spend it at all. I wanted to return the card. But that morning I passed a small clinic near my house. I saw a woman crying outside. Her child couldn't breathe. They needed to pay before treatment. She was begging strangers." Her eyes glistened. "I don't know what came over me. I just remembered the card. So I used it. The nurse said the boy would survive." Her voice broke on that last word. Chike's throat tightened. "You didn't buy anything for yourself?" She shook her head. "What would I buy, sir? You already gave me a job. That's enough for me." Something in Chike's chest cracked open. He hadn't expected gratitude. Not this kind. He looked at her for a long moment, then said softly, "You used that card the way I wish I'd used my own wealth." Ezina blinked in confusion. "Sir?" "I've been giving money for years," he said, his voice trembling slightly. "But not once did I give it with love." "You did?" Tears filled her eyes, but she said nothing. Chike stood slowly, pushing his chair back. "Thank you, Ezina. You can go now." She stood too, bowing slightly. "Good night, sir." When she left the room, the mansion felt heavier than ever. Kunle walked in moments later, hesitant. "Olga, you all right?" Chike gave a small nod. She spent the least, Kunle, but somehow she gave the most. He looked down at his own reflection in the glass table, his eyes hollow. "And now I have to ask myself the hardest question of all." Kunle tilted his head. "What's that, sir?" Chike's voice dropped to a whisper. "If she, with nothing, can be that kind, what's my excuse?" Morning came too early for Chike. The sunlight cut across the curtains of his penthouse, but it felt colder than usual. He hadn't really slept. He'd spent the night replaying Ezine's trembling voice over and over in his head. "What would I buy, sir? You already gave me a job." That sentence haunted him. It was so simple, yet so pure, that it made him feel like a fraud. He rose from bed and stood in front of the mirror. The man who looked back at him didn't look powerful anymore. He looked tired. For the first time in years, he hated what he saw. His expensive suit, his polished wristwatch, all of it. When Kunle entered, carrying the morning report, Chike didn't even glance at it. "Leave it on the table," he said quietly. Kunle hesitated. "Sir, are we still visiting that clinic today?" "Yes, but not just the clinic. I want to see where Ezina lives." Kunle blinked, surprised. "You sure about that? That area's not your kind of environment." "That's exactly why I need to go," Chike said. "Maybe seeing where goodness lives will remind me that it's still real." By mid-morning, the convoy left Eco-Atlantic behind and entered the crowded streets of Aja. The smell of roasted corn and exhaust fumes mixed in the air. Children chased each other between Kiki riders and street vendors. Chike rolled down his window, the noise rushing in. A living, breathing world that never existed in his polished life. When they reached a narrow street lined with rusted zinc roofs, Kunle parked the car. "This is it," he said. Chike stepped out slowly, his shoes sinking slightly into the dusty ground. He drew a few stares. People weren't used to seeing men in tailored suits down here. A little girl pointed at him and whispered, "Mummy, see? He looks like those men on TV." Chike smiled faintly. "Maybe," he said softly. Ezina's house was small, one room and a veranda shaded by an old mango tree. The paint had peeled off the walls, but the place looked clean, cared for. A woman in a wrapper sat outside shelling beans. She looked up, startled when she saw him. "Good morning," Chike greeted politely. "Are you Madame Okafor?" "Yes, sir," she said, rising quickly. Oh my goodness, you're Mr. Maduako, right?" He nodded. "Is your daughter home?" She smiled warmly. "Ezine?" "Yes, sir. She went to the clinic early this morning, but she'll soon be back. Please, sit." "Ah, where are my manners?" She hurried to bring a wooden chair. Chike sat, feeling oddly out of place and yet peaceful. The air smelled of soap and palm oil, the kind of ordinary life he hadn't known in decades. Inside the house, a small photo frame caught his eye through the doorway. Ezina as a child, standing in a school uniform beside her mother. She was smiling shyly, holding a certificate that said, "Best in Conduct." Chike smiled faintly. She was like this even then, wasn't she? Her mother laughed softly. "Too soft-hearted. That girl can give her food to someone and go hungry. I always tell her, 'Ezine, kindness won't pay your bills.' But she'll just say, 'Mama, it pays heaven's rent.'" Something tightened in Chike's chest. Moments later, a familiar voice came from outside. "Mama, I bought the bread and—" Ezina froze at the sight of him. "Sir?" Chike stood. "Good morning, Ezina." She blinked, clearly confused. "You came here?" "I wanted to see where you live," he said gently. "May I come in?" She nodded quickly, flustered. "Of course, sir. I just didn't expect—" Her voice trailed off as she led him inside. The room was small but spotless. A neatly folded bed, a single table with a Bible and an old fan on it. On the wall, a hand-drawn quote in her handwriting read, "If you can't feed 100 people, feed one." Chike read it silently. "You really believe that?" Ezine looked down. "Yes, sir. My father used to say God measures us by what we give, not what we own." Chike sat on the edge of the bed, the metal frame creaking. "And what about you, Ezine? What do you measure yourself by?" She hesitated. "Peace of mind, sir. If I can sleep at night knowing I didn't harm anyone or take what isn't mine, then I'm rich in my own way." Her voice was calm, but her honesty hit him harder than any insult ever had. Outside, her mother called out, offering drinks. Chike declined softly. "No, Ma, thank you. You've already given more than you know." Ezine turned to him. "Sir, I hope I didn't do wrong with the card. I never wanted to overstep." He shook his head. "You did everything right. You did what none of us ever think to do. You helped someone without asking what it would cost." Ezine smiled faintly, still unsure how to respond. "It wasn't much, sir. Just what I could do." Chike looked around again, the patched walls, the quiet dignity of her world, and realized how small his own had become despite its size. As they walked back outside, the little girl who had stared earlier ran up to Ezine. Auntie, Mummy said thank you for the rice." Ezine bent down and hugged her. "Tell your mummy she doesn't need to thank me. God provided." The child grinned and ran off. Chike watched the exchange in silence. Then, in a voice that almost sounded like someone else's, he said, "Ezine, how would you feel about helping me do something bigger?" She frowned slightly. "Bigger?" "Yes," he said. "I've been thinking about starting a foundation. Real charity. Not the kind that makes headlines. You seem to know where the real needs are." Her eyes widened. "Me? Sir, I'm not educated for that kind of thing." "You're educated in compassion," he said simply. "That's more valuable than any degree." She laughed nervously. "I don't know, sir. I'm just a housemaid." Chike smiled. "Not anymore, Ezine. Not after what I've seen." Her mother gasped softly, covering her mouth. Chike stood. "I'll send someone tomorrow. We'll begin plans for the foundation together. You'll have a new role, and your salary will reflect that." Ezine's lips parted, but no words came out. Her eyes filled with tears. "Sir, I don't know what to say." "Then don't say anything," Chike said gently. "Just promise me one thing. Never lose the heart that made you do what you did." He turned to leave, and as he walked back toward the car, Kunle whispered, "Oga, you sure about this?" Chike looked back at the little house behind him, the peeling paint, the laughter, the warmth, and smiled for the first time in years. "Yes, Kunle. For once in my life, I'm sure about something." A month passed, but the memory of that visit never left Chike. Something in him had shifted permanently. The man who once chased expansion and prestige now found joy in smaller things: morning walks, silence, laughter that didn't come from polished rooms but from people who didn't want anything from him. He kept his promise. Within weeks, the Hope Bridge Foundation was born, a charity built to support struggling families, children without medical care, and small community schools that lacked resources. But more importantly, Chike made sure Ezine stood right beside him when it launched. At first, she was shy, reluctant to speak in meetings. She felt lost among executives who threw around big words and financial terms she barely understood. But Chike didn't let her fade into the background. "Speak, Ezine," he would say gently whenever she hesitated. "They understand figures. You understand hearts. That's the difference." Gradually, her confidence grew. She began organizing outreach programs, personally visiting families and hospitals the way she used to help her neighbors. The staff adored her because she listened, not from a place of pity, but from recognition. She didn't treat the poor like statistics. She treated them like people. And every time she smiled, Chike felt something quietly repair inside him. One afternoon, Chike and Ezine drove to Makoko to oversee a school renovation. The roads were rough, the air thick with salt and smoke, yet Ezine's face glowed with peace. "Sir," she said, "you know what I realized?" "What's that?" "Kindness isn't always loud. Sometimes it's the quietest thing in the world, but it changes everything." Chike turned to her, smiling faintly. "You're right. I spent years giving with noise. Press conferences, cameras, sponsorships. You gave with silence, and it echoed louder than all my money ever did." She looked down, embarrassed. "I didn't mean to change anything. I just didn't want that boy to die." "And yet you changed me," he said softly. Their eyes met briefly, and for a moment neither spoke. The months that followed were full of transformation. Ezine no longer lived in the servants' quarters. She moved into a modest apartment within the foundation's compound, where she oversaw daily activities. Her mother received the medical care she needed, and her younger brother got a scholarship funded quietly by Chike himself. The mansion that once echoed with emptiness began to fill with laughter and purpose. Every weekend, Chike hosted community dinners, not for investors or celebrities, but for ordinary people. Children ran through the gardens, their laughter echoing through halls that had once been silent. Sometimes Chike would catch himself standing in the middle of the noise, realizing how strange it felt to finally belong in his own home. One evening, after a long day of meetings, Chike found Ezine sitting alone on the balcony overlooking the lagoon. The air was still, the sun melting into gold. "You should rest," he said quietly. She smiled. "I was just thinking about how everything changed so fast." "For the better," he replied. She nodded slowly. "I still don't understand why you chose me, sir. There are people with more experience, more education." Chike leaned against the railing beside her. "You're right. But I didn't need more experience. I needed honesty. You remind me that goodness doesn't come from status. It comes from choice." Ezine looked at him, her eyes soft. "Sometimes I think you give me too much credit." He chuckled. "If anything, I've not given you enough." The breeze shifted. For a moment they stood in silence, just watching the horizon. It wasn't romantic yet. It was something deeper. Familiarity. Respect. The quiet bond of two souls who had healed each other without trying. A year later, the Hope Bridge Foundation became one of Nigeria's most impactful humanitarian initiatives. Chike and Ezine worked side by side every day. She managing field projects, he handling strategy and funding. Their story spread quietly, not because they chased attention, but because authenticity draws its own light. Amara, his former girlfriend, saw one of their interviews online. Ezine, simple and composed, talking about compassion. She scrolled past it without finishing. Tara, now working abroad, received an invitation to a Hope Bridge conference. She didn't reply, but she read the email twice before deleting it. Life had gone on for everyone, but for Chike, it had just begun. On the first anniversary of Hope Bridge, the mansion that once held cold silence was alive with warmth. The ballroom had been transformed into a community space filled with laughter, music, and the smell of home-cooked food. Chike stood by the window, watching Ezine help serve meals to children. She wore a bright Ankara dress, her smile genuine and unforced. When she finally walked up to him, her hands dusted with flour, she laughed softly. "Sir, you're standing there like a visitor. Come and eat." He smiled. "It still amazes me how this house feels different now." "That's because it's finally a home," she said. He turned to her fully, the room's glow reflected in his eyes. "You know, Ezine, I gave away money for years trying to find meaning, but what I really needed wasn't money. It was you showing me what meaning looks like." Her breath caught. "Sir, Chike," he corrected gently. "Just Chike." She smiled shyly. "Okay, Chike." It was a simple moment, but in that quiet exchange, something tender and unspoken bloomed between them. Months later, news spread across Lagos. Tech billionaire marries his former maid turned humanitarian partner. The wedding was small, intimate, without fanfare. No gold trimmings, no press, just friends, family, and a promise that their life together would always be rooted in service. Years passed. The Hope Bridge Foundation expanded beyond Lagos, building schools, clinics, and homes. But to Chike and Ezine, success no longer meant numbers. It meant faces, laughter, stories, and every time someone thanked them, Chike would smile and say, "Don't thank us. Thank the maid who reminded a billionaire what it means to have a heart." In the end, his wealth had tested others, but her kindness had tested him, and won. Now his mansion wasn't filled with echoes, but with life, not with power, but with purpose. And maybe that's what every story like his should teach us, that love isn't found in riches, but revealed by compassion. If this story touched you, don't scroll away. Take a second to subscribe, drop a comment with what lesson hit you the most, and share this story so others remember. Sometimes, the smallest act of kindness can heal the biggest emptiness. Because true wealth isn't in your bank account, it's in your heart.